Welcome, viewers, for another exciting episode of Canadian Mosaic as part of Awaz Entertainment. I'm your host, Prashanth, and tonight our episode is titled Autonomous, Lock into the 3D-verse. When you think of the word autonomous, you might be thinking about self-driving cars, automation, innovation, and so much more. However, autonomous just means another function for making independent work or doing things separately. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing a software engineer and an entrepreneur by passion, Timothy Locke, and he was born in Toronto, Canada, and studied computer science at the University of Toronto. He's passionate about DIY, which means do-it-yourself projects, home automation, and his recent business called Spark 3D Printing. Thank you, Tim, for joining us today in the studio. We are thrilled to get started for the show. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me over.
Yeah, so Tim, I want to get right into it. So you're a tech enthusiast. You're passionate about so many different things in the tech industry. Can you talk us through your journey of how you got into tech, innovation, and automation growing up?
I think for me, getting into this tech and all of this innovation, it really starts at a young age, and a lot of children as well probably have this, where for example, there might be other children who are playing with toys and all of that stuff. And then meanwhile, you have me trying to open it, figure out how it works. Yeah. And, I'll admit, very unsuccessfully, probably breaking all my toys. But yeah, opening it up, figuring out how, everything goes. And then just, learning from that, always trying to figure out all of these different things, how to continue building and putting things together.
I see. Are you one of those kids, like, you get a toy or a product or something, instead of playing with it, you're the ones that be opening up and see how stuff works on the inside?
You know what? Not right away.
Not right
because
away.
you gotta play with it first, and then eventually, once you get bored, you're like, I really gotta know how this works.
Fair enough, fair enough. I think curiosity is really something that's intriguing, like, growing up as a tech enthusiast, I believe. Tim, I want to talk a little bit about your time at the aeronautics division at the University of Toronto. So I know that you were a team member as part of the aerospace team. Can you tell us a little bit about the team and what your experience was like? Because it sounds really cool and interesting, the aerospace world. So talk us through your experiences like working on that team and your experience there.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe for some very quick context, the Toronto Aerospace Team, so the University of Toronto Aerospace Team, or UTAT, is composed of many different divisions that do, participate in many different competitions, both in Canada and around the world. There's a satellite team who actually, I think, are trying to launch a satellite into space. There's the rocketry team, which builds rockets. And then there's the division that I was part of, which was the aeronautics division. And we build drones to participate in competitions with other universities around Canada.
Wow, that's really exciting. So does that mean that growing up, you're part of a lot of science competitions and robotics challenges and things like that, like, in university as well as high school as well?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's, for me, there's many different teams that one can really join, especially if you want to do more than just school and you want to actually participate in extracurriculars and further your interests. For me, it was always, the robotics and all of that stuff. And, when I got to university, it was the same thing. So, I tried joining some other teams on campus. Choir, if you believe it or not, I don't know if I can sing, but I was part of that. And then eventually I've discovered this team and I was like, I really want to focus on this one.
Yeah, so Tim, how important do you think it is to really get into it at a younger age? Because I think, in high school in Toronto, in Canada itself, we have these programs where you are competing against schools. How important do you think it is for kids and people that are watching the show is to get involved as soon as possible?
I mean, obviously, I think that depends on where you want to go, right? Because I'm a very STEM, more of a tech-focused person, whereas some people, they have different passions that may not be in this field. But in terms of, STEM and all of that stuff, I feel like it's really important to start earlier because a lot of schools are teaching it these days, and really, it's an industry that's just going to keep growing.
Yeah. I think when it comes to programming, kids are learning programming when 1 or 2 years old right now. It's kind of ridiculous to see how young people are getting triggered. Like, what's your thoughts on? Because I know you used to teach back in the day as well. So what are your thoughts on teaching kids robotics and programming at such an early age? Like, is that a good idea? Are we putting them with too much information, or is it the right step with the education systems kind of moving towards?
I think it really depends on how these programs are structured, because like when you think of coding, you think of programming robots, you really just think of typing lines of code, right? Like this and that, and it looks like you're a hacker. But it really isn't. For when you're teaching kids, there's many different tool sets that are available to them where it's literally, for example, an iPad app where you drag and drop different blocks. You want your robot to go forward, then turn left, right? It's very simple, and I think if you can gamify this and all that, it will teach the fundamentals.
Yeah, I think like what you're talking about is more recent. It was not like this 10, 15 years ago, I think. Like, I think we were used to doing a lot of manual programming, so growing up, this did not exist. Like, I could not drag and drop. I had to literally code lines of code in order to do right and left. So no, that's great. So Tim, one of the unique things about you is you're very interested in DIY, so which means do-it-yourself kind of projects. Can you shed some light on some of the cool things that you related to drone work that you did when you were at University of Toronto and the activities you were on? It sounds really interesting and cool. So I'd love to hear more about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, I should definitely talk more about this team. And we participate in many different competitions, and let me tell you about one of them that we had to participate in. So in this competition, the drone has to be autonomous, and it has to basically fly around a huge airfield looking for particular targets. And then delivering a payload to them. In this case, for my year, we had to drop a roll of toilet paper onto a target. And basically, you get judged on how close to the center point that you drop it. And there's other tasks such as using the camera on a drone and identifying, for example, counting how many different objects are on the field. For example, how many geese on the field, right? Because this could be used for wildlife surveying and counting and all of that.
That's really interesting. So what are other things that you got involved with, Tim? Because I know there's a bunch of things we're going to get into a bit later, but what are some things like, growing up, you were involved in? Let's say, for example, winding the clocks back to, like, let's say, high school, perhaps. What did you do back then? Because I want to see what you were doing then, and then we'll get into some of the stuff after the break. We're going to get stuff that you're working on now and what you were doing in the past as well. So what are some cool DIY projects that you've done growing up as a teenager and prior to that?
Honestly, you know what? To be realistic, my high school self was a lot of gaming, like a lot of people. But no, I was definitely part of the robotics team in high school as well. And there's coding challenges, coding competitions, and all of that stuff. I feel like that's something that really interests me because the joy that you get when you make a computer do something that it's like, oh, I made it do that. It normally couldn't. So like, it's really, really.
Absolutely. What is it about robotics and just the coding aspect interests you the most, Tim? Because I think you mentioned making things work, but it has to be something more there. Do you enjoy debugging? Do you enjoy figuring out what's wrong with it, or going through millions of lines of code? Because you are a software engineer by profession, your day job. So what is it that you enjoy, and what is it that you hate about your field, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, to start with the debugging, for legal purposes, I really love debugging. But
gotta love the debugging. I gotta love your debugger and everything.
But I mean, there is a sense of truth in that. I mean, during debugging, you're always frustrated. You're like, oh my gosh, why isn't this working? It should be working. But once you do figure it out and once you solve it, you get that adrenaline rush, and you're like, oh, I figured it out finally, right?
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Like, I mean, so what is it that you, let's say future version of yourself? You go back, and what is it that you're hoping to accomplish? Because you are interested in robotics and automation, a bunch of things. What is the future version of you want to be? Like, do you want to go into robotics more, or do you want to do something different, or what is the future Tim looking like right now?
Ooh, that's really hard to tell. But I definitely enjoy the field that I'm working in, and love to continue being in there.
Continue being there. No, that's cool. That's cool. So Tim, like, let's we'll talk about this more in the break. But I mean, you do work on a bunch of little projects at home, right? So one thing that I know is you are looking into home automation. You do things like the blinds and things like that. So walk us through the process. So I want viewers to understand, like, what it means to be doing home automation, for example. So what does that look like?
Yeah, and maybe a lot of viewers have already started having some of this home automation in their house. But in terms of home automation, it's you can make it do many things. So for example, if you have a house, you can get it to start turning on the lights, opening the garage as you're approaching your house. Or when you're walking into a room, have it turn on the lights, set the temperature, etc. So it's a lot of these separate entities as part of your house, and you're trying to combine it together to be just one cohesive unit.
Got it. No, I see. So, I mean, are you more of a, do you have a specific kind of tool in mind, like, Alexa, Google, Apple, anything like that? I know it's a bit of a controversial question, but I mean, like, everybody has their favorites. I know you have used all of them. Is there something that you like more than the other, perhaps, based on usability and things like that?
You know what? I'd have to say, you're putting me in a rough position here. I'd have to say Google, but that's mainly because, back then, I'd say probably, 5-6 years ago, the Google Home, it was a lot more powerful, in my opinion at least, than their competitors. And I think, getting that head start is really important. Once you capture that market, it's, I myself, like my house it has some Google in it. I don't want to switch.
I see. But wait, hold on a second. Weren't you an Alexa fan before this?
A very long time ago, yes. This was actually back then, before Alexa was available in Canada.
Yeah. No, I remember. Like, I think I personally bought it from the States, and then I brought it over. Because I think like Canada was for some reason they didn't have it at that time, so it was a little difficult to do. So Tim, like, I mean, what are some initial steps for people that are watching? Like, hey, like I want to get started with these things, right? So A is one of these products, like Alexa, Google, HomePod, like one of these things. Mm-hmm. But like, let's say that off the shelf kind of thing. If people want to go try stuff, I know. I think a couple of Christmases ago, there's a whole bunch of sales on a whole bunch of products and things like that. Let's say that someone is just wanting to get their foot in the door and be like, hey, you know what? I just want to turn on my bedroom lights or something like that, right? So what is the first step? Are they going to go to Best Buy, Amazon? What is the best approach in terms of finding products that you really, really like to buy?
I think that's a very deep question that I'd love to go a lot more into after.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many different brands, and there's so many things, and there's so many things to consider when buying these things. But I'd say, the first step is just getting one of these, if you want, getting one of these smart speakers. And they're giving them away like candy. I don't know if you noticed. You can buy them for like $20, $30 when they're on sale. Some places just outright give it to you, right? So start with one of those, learn how to incorporate it into your life, and then you'll be able to work from there.
Absolutely. I know what you mean, but I mean, just walking around like IKEA, Best Buy, and things like that, everything is so like affordable now. Maybe that is the future. So we're actually going to take a short commercial break, folks, and we're going to take a deeper look into home automation and continue this conversation. Hopefully, we'll have some tips and tricks on getting started and getting a little bit more into it. So don't go anywhere, folks. Stay tuned.
पूरे ओंटारियो में लाखों लोग अपनी कोविड-19 की वैक्सीन हासिल कर चुके हैं। हेल्थ कनाडा की मंजूरशुदा तमाम वैक्सीन्स महफूज और अस्पतालों, डॉक्टर्स के दफातर, फार्मेसीज और अवामी वैक्सीनेशन के मुकामात पर हासिल हैं। अपना किरदार अदा करें, अपनी वैक्सीन हासिल करें। 300 जुबानों में मदद के लिए ontario.ca/book वैक्सीन पर जाएं या 1-888-999-6488 पर कॉल करें।
आपकी रिहाइश ऐसी हो जहां जिंदगी की सहूलत मयसर हो, जो आपको बुलंदियों पर ले जाए, तो मिलिए रियल एस्टेट मार्केट के एक्सपीरियंस्ड रियल एस्टेट प्रोफेशनल अमित ओबेरॉय से। GTA में रियल एस्टेट मार्केट के हर अंदाज से वाकिफ। आपको घर खरीदना हो, बेचना हो या करना हो मुनाफे का इन्वेस्टमेंट, मेरे तजुर्बे से आज ही फायदा उठाएं। आज ही कॉल करें अमित ओबेरॉय 647-291-8102। अमित ओबेरॉय, ब्यूटीफुल होम्स यू कैन अफोर्ड। 2020 का लाजवाब ऑफर, जहां हम 0% फाइनेंसिंग पर आपकी मनपसंद कार दे रहे हैं। फ्री विंटर टायर्स, और साथ ही हम मुफ्त ऑयल चेंज भी दे रहे हैं, वो भी उम्र भर के लिए। अभी आएं और इस लाजवाब ऑफर का लुत्फ लें। जल्दी करें, आपका खुशामदीद हमारे आउटलेट में, जो कि 60 क्विंट्स प्लेट ड्राइव एट इंटरसेक्शन क्लोज टू हाईवे 27 एंड रेक्सडेल अपोजिट टू वुडबाइन रेस ट्रैक। जल्द से जल्द इस ऑफर का लुत्फ लें। आज ही कॉल करें सुनील अग्रवाल को 647-703-0218।
डिक्सी और एग्लिंटन के इंटरसेक्शन पे तशरीफ लाइए ज़ौक़ रेस्टोरेंट। जायकेदार लजीज खानों का मरकज, पाकिस्तानी, इंडियन और हक्का चाइनीज। आप हमसे लाइव बारबेक्यू और कैटरिंग के लिए राब्ता कर सकते हैं। राब्ते के लिए हमारा नंबर 9056257786।
ज़ौक़ रेस्टोरेंट, ज़ौक़ वालों के लिए।
Welcome back to Canadian Mosaic, folks, and we have Timothy Locke from Toronto, Canada, and we're focusing on many things related to autonomous, so DIY projects and home automation and so much more. So Tim, like your parents and friends describe you as someone that likes to do things hands-on, right? So you like to automate a number of things in your home, and many of it's related to IoT. Can you give us a definition in simple terms? What exactly is IoT and your passion towards them?
Yeah, I mean, IoT stands for Internet of Things. And it's really just, your devices that are connected, interconnected together. So for example, if you buy a new fridge, some of it might be, a smart fridge that can talk to the internet. It can, I've seen this Twitter post the other day where the fridge tells you how many times you've opened it during the month to like shame you or something. That's an example of a device. Another one, maybe your smart lights that you can control on your phone. Some garage openers these days, you can also do it from your phone. Right? If you leave and you forget to close the garage door, it'll do it on its own. So all of these devices that you've previously haven't really expected to connect to the internet, suddenly on the network.
Mm-hmm. Right. So sometimes, what are some, a lot of people are hesitant about this, right? So right now, you're giving access your devices to the internet. That means anyone can hack into it. So a lot of people are hesitant about, getting into this because like right now, let's be real, like anybody can hack into your network and, play around with your lights or anything like that. So what are some, drawbacks and flaws with this? Because, it is a very interesting space. Like, if I hack into your network, I can literally like play around with your lights and TV and just do all these things, right? So what are some drawbacks and negative aspects to this? There are some positives, obviously. Everything is interconnected, you can control things, all that stuff. But what are some negative things related to IoT and the future of how appliances, things are evolving to?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that's actually like something that is concerning and preventing me from, doing certain things such as smart locks or like that, right? What if, a robber can just, use their phone and walk into your house? And, with that being said, with this security aspect of it, some drawbacks related to it is, for example, if there's a security vulnerability found in one of these devices, for example, me being able to open your door, like without your password or something, then yeah, those definitely have to be addressed, and you better hope that whatever brand you're using is able to get on that really quickly. And you asked me a question before, which was, what should consumers be looking at when they choose to buy one of these? And I first said, okay, maybe get yourself, a Google, get yourself an Alexa or a HomeKit. Your next step would probably be to go into these stores, find a device that's compatible with, your Google, Alexa, whatever, but also make sure that they're a big brand name, a reputable one. Don't just go on the internet and find the cheapest door lock that you can find. Because, while it may be good in the current time, once there's a security exploit or something that's discovered that affects that device, if the company isn't there to fix it, if they're not routinely sending security updates, because remember, these IoT devices are just computers. They run their own operating systems, right? Just like your laptop might run Windows or Mac, and there's viruses for those. So there's going to be viruses for these devices as well. There's going to be security vulnerabilities for these as well that these companies have to stay on top of. So with bigger brands, you can't guarantee this, but they'll probably update it a lot more than this random brand that you found on the internet for $10.
Absolutely. Like, I think it's worthwhile to invest your money in some of the higher brands, just because, like, you don't want to just buy something and then, like, have it break as well as get hacked as well too, which is not actually a good thing as well. So Tim, like, I want to talk a little bit about your specific setup at your home, right? So I think that's something I want to showcase as part of the show is, most people will just buy an Alexa or a Google and buy a bunch of smart lights and stuff, and they start, like, putting things together. But you, on the other hand, like, you kind of have your own little setup on how you brought this together. So talk us through your own setup that you have at your home, like, because how did you go about bringing this up, and then just walk us through it. So we want to understand if somebody else is watching this, they can kind of copy or interpret how you've set it up. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. I mean, there's many different parts in I guess my house that are smart. There's smart blinds, there's smart lights, and all of this.
Yeah. But hold on. So the blinds are like, you made them smart blinds, right? Like, okay. So it's not something you bought off the shelf and you just made them smart. You actually made them as a smart blind, correct?
Right, yes. So there's physically a motor that's just pulling on the cords to open and close the blinds. And I made this for multiple reasons. The first one being was that there wasn't any affordable, not hundreds of dollars worth of equipment. And also the other part was the security aspect of things. Like for me, if I'm able to code this, sure, I might not be the best person in the world, but I understand how this works, and I can integrate it within my network itself, and always provide updates for it when I need to update the operating system on it to, so that it patches any security exploits that might be on it, and all of that. Now, one of the things I didn't mention before was a lot of brands that you buy these days. So yeah, a lot of brands that you buy these days, these smart devices, they actually don't stay within your home network. So they don't stay within your house. They actually talk to the company's servers. They actually talk to Google and all of that stuff. Now, there's several drawbacks to this. First of all, the company knows exactly when you've been opening and closing your doors, locking and all that. And if the company can know that, then any hacker who's made its way into there can also know that as well. Yep. And the second of all is if your internet goes down, you want to be able to turn on your lights.
Right, that's a really good point, because if you make everything smart, then how it is. So in my personal home, I have a combination of both. So what is it? How do you back this up, Tim? So let's say, for example, that is a scenario that happens. Your internet does die out, and we have no internet for anything. How do people survive? There's no, because I think it's hard to believe a world these days without the internet. So when it comes to specific smart blinds and just smart world altogether, what is the backup? Like, if everything goes dead, what happens? What's the next course of alternative?
I mean, that's a good question, and thankfully, it's thankfully a lot of these companies, they have their products have ways that you can turn them on and off manually without having to go through their servers. And for example, if you use the IKEA lights, even if they're not responding, you just turn off and then turn them on, and then they'll default to turning on. Right? A lot of these have, and some of them even have, physical buttons on them. For example, your smart fridge probably isn't going to stop working just because your internet is down.
Right. The smart capability will probably be down. I think that's the same thing when it relates to any of the products, right? On Apple, Google, or anything like that. The device will still work. Maybe the clock functionality or something. Anything that connects to the internet, or perhaps is not going to work. So Tim, a lot of kids these days are probably this is something that's exciting for them, right? So they can have little projects here and there. Make these lights flicker on and off and make it through to a theme or something like that. So what kind of recommendation do you have for kids to kind of that want to program these kind of things? What kind of advice do you have for them in terms of learning something? Perhaps it's a language, perhaps it's a hardboard, it's a board or something like that. Walk us through what can people do today that they can do over the summer, perhaps.
Yeah, there's many different. I mean, it depends on the age, first of all. But let's say we're talking about young children. There's many different kits, robotics kits, and all these electronic kits that are available for them. And this ties closely with what I was talking about earlier. There's several brands, maybe like Lego, for example. They make these robotic kits for kids. I mean, if you want to make a robotic kid, I mean, program it.
You never know. That could be coming. You never know. There might be a kid out there that will, I want to create a copy of myself. That could be very doable.
Oh yeah, and you know, it's something where like it comes with instruction manuals where you can build like, you know, predefined robots, and then like you whip out your iPad, you whip out your tablet, and you start programming it by just dragging and dropping different blocks, just like you would think something really intuitive.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you start learning from that, you start building your robots, your projects, and then eventually you're going to start moving on to the next part where, you know, building it will maybe still you're snapping pieces together. But for programming, you might be working with more complicated blocks, learning all of the fundamentals of programming through these types of blocks. So, you know, for maybe the technically inclined, you know, for loops and like if statements, all of that stuff, they can be represented using these simple things. And, you know, as when you're programming like in real languages and all of that, you're going to be using that as well. So working your way up and then eventually maybe actually just full out coding the robot.
Tim, it's so clear that you're very passionate about this stuff, but let me ask you something outside of this. What else would you like to do for fun? Like, I mean, clearly you're passionate about robotics, automation, this kind of stuff, and I've seen you, you know, play with drones, this, that, all these things. What is something outside of this space that you're interested in?
Outside of this space, you know what? I've been really into playing casual games on my couch. I've been playing so much Pokemon, and like both on the Switch and on my phone. It's crazy. I should stop.
You know where I'm going with this question, right? So I think like for the viewers that are watching, Tim actually has 216K followers on TikTok. So I want to talk a little bit about how you got there. So you do all this like, you know, tech stuff and automation and stuff as that. Tell us a bit about how that happened, because I understand like, you know, you got really into the whole video editing and things like that. So how did that happen? Because that's a pretty big number. Like 216K, that's huge. How did you get to that, and what did you do to grow yourself on the social media platform called TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, I joined, I'd say probably right when TikTok, when Musical.ly, I don't know if anybody remembers what that is, became TikTok. But yeah, I just watched it. And I think, you know, everyone who has this app can probably agree that it's very, very addicting. Like you can spend hours on it. And then there reached a point where I was like, you know what, I wanna make something like this too. Just try out like making some really like, how would I say it, memey, very silly, silly TikToks and all of that, silly videos. And then eventually, you know, I realized, hey, this is something that I like doing. It's sort of my way of de-stressing. And especially, you know, back when I was doing school and all this stuff, I just wanted something to keep me productive, keep my mind away from it, rather than just, you know, playing games in front of the computer, even though I just mentioned Pokemon so much.
Hey, you know what? Like, we got to do a bunch of things, right? So your way of doing, you know, Pokemon videos and DIY project, that is one way to, like, you know, satisfy your passion as well as what you're really passionate about, interests and things like that as well. So that's awesome, Tim. So we're going to take another quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Tim's passion about, you know, 3D printing and his side business that he has, and we'll go deeper into how we got that started and how it's booming at the moment. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after this break.
पूरे ओंटारियो में लाखों लोगों ने अपना कोविड-19 टीका लगवाया है। स्वास्थ्य कनाडा द्वारा अनुमोदित सभी टीके सुरक्षित हैं और अस्पतालों, डॉक्टरों के कार्यालयों, फार्मेसियों और सामूहिक टीकाकरण स्थलों में उपलब्ध हैं। अपनी भूमिका निभाएं, अपना टीका लगवाएं। वेबसाइट ontario.ca/book vaccine पर जाएं या 300 भाषाओं में सहायता के लिए 1888 999 6488 पर कॉल करें।
दो 2020 का लाजवाब ऑफर, जहां हम 0% फाइनेंसिंग पर आपकी मनपसंद कार दे रहे हैं, फ्री विंटर टायर्स, और साथ ही हम मुफ्त ऑयल चेंज भी दे रहे हैं, वो भी उम्र भर के लिए। अभी आएं और इस लाजवाब ऑफर का लुत्फ लें। जल्दी करें, आपका खुशामदीद हमारे आउटलेट में, जो कि 60 क्वींस प्लेट ड्राइव at intersection close to Highway 27 and Rexdale opposite to Woodbine Racetrack। जल्द से जल्द इस ऑफर का लुत्फ लें। आज ही कॉल करें सुनील अग्रवाल को 647-703-0218। देखिए लाइव जुमे का खुतबा हर जुमा दोपहर 1:30 बजे। हालात हजरा हर हफ्ते की शाम 7 बजे। अवेयरनेस हर इतवार शाम 7 बजे। थिंक अबाउट इट हर मंगल शाम 7 बजे। कुछ खट्टी कुछ मीठी बातें सिर्फ बातों ही बातों में हर जुमेरात शाम 8 बजे। मस्ती की शाम हर इतवार शाम 8 बजे। बच्चों की दुनिया हर जुमा शाम 5 बजे। लेट्स फाइंड आउट हर बुध की शाम 7 बजे। देखिए तकरार कीजिए तकरार समीना जबीन के साथ हर रोज रात 9 बजे और रिपीट सुबह 9 बजे। आप देख रहे हैं आवाज एंटरटेनमेंट, आवाज आपकी, चैनल हमारा, जुड़िए हम।
Welcome back to Canadian Mosaic, folks, and we are here with Timothy Locke looking at do-it-yourself projects, home automation, and we haven't touched on this yet, but Tim's also super passionate about 3D printing, and he has his own business called Spark 3D Printing. And so Tim, like your 3D printing business was kind of born during the pandemic. I think like it's a good thing for us to share. Can you share us a story of how you came up with this idea of 3D printing, and tell us your journey beginning this during the pandemic? Because at that time, all of us who are in tech were working from home. I suppose you had some spare time and you wanted to do a few things. So talk us through your journey of how Spark 3D printing was born.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like one of the things I wanted for a very long time was a 3D printer, because like what would I print with it? I don't know. But like I just wanted to have one in my house and be able to like print cool things. Right. And at the same time in my head I was like, but I also don't want to pay for this. So I was like, oh, what if I get one and then sell some prints, like, you know, casually sell some prints online, and, you know, at least, you know, maybe break even with the printer and be like, okay, we're there. And, you know, during the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were rediscovering themselves, working from home. And, you know, I hope I'm not calling anybody out here, but making sourdough bread, I know a lot of people have been doing that. Thank you for that. Me buying bread at the supermarket was really cheap. But for me, I decided I wanted to do 3D printing instead, and to just, you know, expand my passion. And like you said, I'm working from home all the time, so I have a lot more free time to discover this.
For sure. So Tim, like, you know, it's great to see that you brought us a few samples from your 3D printer. Can you talk us through your process of, you know, how much time it takes to create one of these objects? Maybe we'll go through some of these projects. Maybe let's go through one of the smaller ones, perhaps. Just talk us through how long it takes to print something like this, and how does it work, really?
Yeah, very, very fair. And I think, you know, before I start with this, maybe many viewers at home, they're used to just, you know, like a printer, just printing a sheet of paper. How does that turn into something?
Please, shed us some light on what 3D printing actually is, because for folks that might not understand that this is coming out of a printer, folks. Like, this is literally coming out of a printer. So yes, how is a 3D printer different from a regular printer, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's start with something that's really, really small, like something like this, or even a Christmas ornament that we sell, and it's selling really well as well. Like this itself probably just takes like a good, you know, five minutes to print, but something like this would take 30 minutes. And if you go even bigger, something like this or this would take, you know, 10, 11 hours just to print. And, you know, the longest one I've printed was around 2 days. So,
whoa.
Yeah.
What was that you printed, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of these big like masks that a customer of mine wanted to print. I don't know how to describe it, but maybe a lot of people have watched Squid Games. So
there it is again, Squid Games. I've been hearing Squid Games way too many times this last little while. Yes.
Think of that. Think of something like that geometric mask that the game master wears. But point is, bigger objects take a long time to print, and maybe like it might help if I go into how a printer works.
Absolutely. Continue. Yes.
Sure. So whenever you're printing something, you know, like this, it's really printed in layers. So one layer at a time. So really, I want you to think of your home printer, right? You're printing pieces of paper. Now, think of let's say you're printing a black and white piece of paper. Think of the black being, you know, the outline of a particular object, at a given layer. So I'm just stacking lots and lots of pieces of paper together. So imagine your printer printing, let's say, 10,000 sheets of paper and stacking them up. You cut everything except for that, black ink on each layer. That's sort of what a 3D printer is. And with a 3D printer, it's literally like every sheet, every layer, I'm taking a pen and I'm just drawing it out, but with plastic. And then once I'm done that sheet, I go a little higher and then draw it out with a pen. Something like that. Hopefully I'm not being too oversimplified here.
No, that's completely perfect. So Tim, like one thing I wanted to understand is you have an entire process going in terms of this business. So if I had to summarize it, so it's ornaments and a whole bunch of stuff that's available on the Etsy store. But from what I understand, but since the time that you've started this business and now you've pretty much automated this whole process. Right, like so. Can you talk us through the process that you have? So, let's say that I personally want a phone case, for example. Like that's something that I want to order. So, walk us through the flow of events that's going to happen for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I begin with this, for some context, I still have a full-time job, right, working. So that means, that's not saying that I'm putting down this business. What I'm saying is that I don't have as much time as you might think to invest into this.
Right.
So basically what happens when you make an order, I've made this custom system to work with my print farm. Whereas the moment a customer orders something like you order, let's say this ornament here,
right.
My system will pick it up and proceed to send the order to any available printer that has the correct color and the type of plastic needed to print. And then the printer is just going to go ahead and do all of that stuff. And when the order is ready to ship, that means it's printed. That's the only time where I would go into the printer, pick up the order, and then my system will already have a label ready for me and all of that stuff. So really all I have to do is take the order, put it into an envelope, and then just send it over to the post office. But that doesn't mean that I'm not spending time working on this system, doing some R&D, finding more products that people are looking for.
Yeah. And I think it's a continuous improvement. I think like you always find things to better. I think you started off with a couple of printers, but now how many printers do you have now?
We're at 7 now.
That's 7 printers in his own home, folks. He's literally doing this and printing out objects such as what you see here. No, that's really intelligent of you to find that market because everybody needs ornaments, right? Like when it comes to Christmas, New Year's, even Halloween, for example, like people always want stuff. And I think on a regular, ongoing basis, there's always things that people want, like for example, phone case or a stand or something like that. I think that's what your store is all about, like finding these small items that people actually want and prefer to buy a 3D printer than like let's say pay somebody like $100 to print something where you can probably do it much cheaper as well. So what's the difference between the whole color and that? So I know that if you mix and match colors and stuff, it takes a lot longer, correct? Is that how it works if you have multiple colors in an object?
Yeah, definitely. So if your printer supports multiple colors, what it really has to do is once it's done printing one color, it has to go and basically switch colors. And that means ejecting the existing color and wasting a lot of plastic so that by the time it spits out a lot of extra plastic to the side, it has the new color and it's ready to print the other color. So normally for 3D prints, you might, for most of the time, especially for my customers, when they have like complex objects such as figures and models and all of that stuff, they would generally just paint it.
Cool, that's really cool. Like I guess color and it's almost the same as black and white, and this the color is a lot more expensive and things like that. So there is some direct correlation to that. So it's really interesting. So that's really impressive, Tim. So Tim, like I want to take a little bit of break and play some games before we wrap up. So I call this game like React. So basically, I'm gonna come up with a word or something like that, and you just tell me like what's on your mind or whatever it is. Okay? Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's go.
Cool. Don't think too hard. Just kind of say what's on your mind. So when I say the word innovation, what comes to mind for you?
I really I don't know why, but I think of space travel. That's something that really
interesting. You're a fan of Elon Musk? Or?
Elon Musk or any of this, like it takes a lot of engineering to be able to send someone up in space and get them back down without anything.
The key is get them back down. You gotta come back down to earth.
I can get you up. I can't get you down.
There's no promises. Like you're gonna go up, but like you don't come back. Okay, cool. This is an interesting question. Pandas or koalas?
Why are you doing this to me?
Because you have some interesting posts on your social media. That's why I'm asking. Like, which one do you like, pandas or koalas?
I like pandas. They're
like pandas?
just so
Don't like
cute
the
and
Australian
fun.
koalas?
I
no?
like koalas too, but if you make me choose one.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. No, pandas are cute for sure. Jim, what are you most scared of?
Spiders.
Spiders? Okay, so
It
the
doesn't-
spider come out of this and you're gonna be okay with it.
I'm just gonna run away.
Hopefully not before the show ends. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I live in a condo. There's always spider season, and during that time,
Oh,
I'm
boy.
like, I'm not going out.
Oh boy, that's interesting. I'm not a fan of spiders either. Tim, so what excites you the most? Like, what's something that get up in the morning and be like, yeah, I want to do.
I don't know. I feel like even like especially still with my 3D printing, like every day is just such a new, different adventure. Even though it's the same things over and over again. If anybody has ever 3D printed anything before, you know your printer always breaks. So every day is an exciting adventure of fixing printers.
I see. No, that's cool. That's cool. Tim, cats or dogs?
Oh man. I'd say cats because you don't have to walk them too much and they cuddle with you and all that. But at the same time, they don't play with you a lot. So I don't know.
Interesting.
It's rough. What about you?
Oh boy, dogs for me.
Okay.
I gotta say dogs. Yeah, I love. I mean, both are okay. I think dogs. I like the more physical activity kind of thing, but cats are cool too. No favoritism here. Something a little controversial because I know what one of these you have. Turtles or hamsters?
Turtles are. Well, I have a turtle, so I'm gonna have to go. I never had a hamster before.
You never had a hamster?
But,
Like not even through high science experiments back in school or anything like that?
No, but I feel like a hamster would smell.
I have no idea. I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I would not know. Yeah. So Tim, I want to step back a little bit. If you have to give advice to your younger self in terms of, right now, the era that we kind of live in when it comes to technology, automation, because autonomous is a very broad word. Because, you see cars, you see home automation, you see Internet of Things, there's so much out there right now. If you have to kind of, go back in time and give yourself some advice for the younger version of yourself, what would that be? And what would that be?
I mean, it's very hard because remember, like things that are available today aren't available back then.
Exactly, because right now, kids have access to social media, has access to an iPad. Like they're literally playing around with these things. I'm like, that didn't exist when I was growing up. It's kind of crazy to see how much things have changed over the last 10, 15 years, for example. So I see what you mean. But if you did have to, let's say you go back and be like, you knew this was coming, you knew all this stuff that were coming back then, what would you tell yourself at that time?
Honestly, I would say learn programming. Back then, there was a huge step for me where I didn't want to learn it because it felt really scary. It was a huge leap. But then once I started doing it, I really, really enjoyed it. So if I learned it from younger, I'd probably be a lot further than I am right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's kind of look. That's a good point, Tim, because let's talk about just computers in general. Because there's a generation gap between us and our parents or grandparents and things like that. Because right now everything has been smartphones, digital, everything. So how it's difficult for someone that's slightly on the older side to get adapted to these things. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how can they kind of get involved? Because everyone is kind of forced to use a smartphone now. Like that is just the norm now. Like nobody really, if you don't have a smartphone, it's considered out of the norm. So what does that mean to you? Would you say that we are doing the right things in terms of educating people and kind of adapting these technologies? Because I didn't grow up with smartphones. It happened, much later down the line. I'm not sure about you, but you are younger than me. So, but did you grow up with smartphones growing up, or?
Well, I mean, you're probably gonna laugh at this, but I didn't get my first smartphone until grade 10. So.
Oh, okay. I had a flip phone in grade 10, guys. Come on. I had a flip phone. It was black and white, and I just had to emergency calls, and I couldn't figure out how to do the caps lock on this one because there was another button which I never figured out. And it was on pay as you go, and I was like, no, that was me.
25 cents a text.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's free text. If you think about how much technology has evolved over time, it's massive. So what are so going back to the whole coding, and it can be scary because I know even me, some of the concepts and stuff that we learned, is technically scary. So what kind of advice would you say, like someone that's learning programming for the first time, and it says that there's a vast number of concepts. There's web, automation, data science, there is mobile, this, that, iOS, and there's a lot. Where would you say that they really need to bring in, and what kind of tips would you say to them? Because anybody can just pick up something and do, but what would you say is the right steps to really get started?
Yeah, I'd say, whenever you're learning something like even programming, there's many different websites these days that let you, you can do it on your iPad, you can do it on your computer. I wouldn't recommend your phone, but you can do it on your phone, right? And they basically gamify a lot of this. So while you're learning the fundamentals of programming that you're going to be using in any programming language, it's turned into a game where you get to see your score, see your challenges, and all of that. So if let's say you don't have that motivation before to learn programming, now would be the time. There's so many of these fun, quirky little websites that help you learn.
Right. What do you say about folks that are kind of, that are thinking about getting into it? Because a lot of people right now are trying to get into programming. Because everybody's done their thing for a while. They like the whole work from home aspect of things, because when you are in the software world, you do have the flexibility of working remotely, working on a beach, or working on a resort or something like that, right? So it is kind of a wow factor. But I think, personally speaking, I feel like people are missing the fundamentals, right? Because you have to go back to the core fundamentals of programming, which is data structures, algorithms, and that type of stuff. Would you say for someone that's kind of transitioning from a different career to this one, would you say go to those roots first? Or would you say just pick up something and kind of, I want to program an app and just do that? How important is it, the fundamentals versus this one?
I think the fundamentals in terms of learning, maybe not like data structures and algorithms and all that stuff, but learning the fundamentals of programming and being able to do, your loops, your if statements, all of that, without those, you probably can't get very far. Then once you start doing that, you're probably going to eventually start learning about different algorithms you can use to, manipulate data. For example, sort, a list of things, or even do all of these different tasks. Maybe, for example, if you're using your navigation program, how are they finding the shortest route from point A to point B? Right? All of that stuff. You might eventually, start learning about it. But if you feel like once you get to that part, you are stuck and you really don't have motivation, then move somewhere else and learn. There's so much room in the programming space and the tech space for you to grow your passion in it.
Would you ever give up this field, Tim? Would you ever say I don't want to program, I want to be an actor or something like that? The reason I ask is because of your TikTok. Going back to your TikTok, man, because that's really interesting, because you do have that talent of creating cool videos and things like that, and you seem to really enjoy doing that. So would you ever give up this world and kind of switch over?
When I was doing my TikToks, I didn't really enjoy the acting part of it, but I really enjoyed playing around with the video editor and to do all these these mind tricks. If you ever seen some of my TikToks, would be all these mind tricks and all these cool things that back then a lot of other TikTok creators didn't have. But now it's the production value of all these TikToks have gone up. But being able to do all that was my passion. So more of the video editing side. But in terms of giving up where I am right now, I don't think so. I really like where I am.
So Tim, what is the future of your home automation projects as well as your Spark 3D printing? What does the future look like for you?
I live in a condo, so there's only that many things I can do and automate. But in terms of, my Spark 3D printing, I want to continue growing it and, even being able to share my passion of 3D printing to people who don't have a 3D printer and let them, discover all of these cool things that they can make. I know I've only brought props and stuff, but I've had people message me where, a certain part of their drawer has broke. They want to print a new handle. Or, for example, a gear has broke in one of their, I don't know what they wanted it for, but a gear has broke and they wanted to get replacement parts. And I think, eventually once everyone has a 3D printer in their house, that will be a lot more commonplace where, oh, did something, I need, a bottle or whatnot, oh, I'll just print it. I'll be back in an hour and it's going to be good to go.
Right. So I can see so practical use of that because, oftentimes you have, a nut has been, like a bolt has been taken off, like a little crack in this kind of thing. So you're saying that we can use the technology of 3D printing in order to do that because I know it has kind of other benefits in the health industry as well. We were just talking about this, offline because, we can build robotic arms and legs and things like that because 3D printing, the field itself is huge. We're just giving a small example of that, bringing ornaments and products and things like that. But it can really change the way that we operate even too, right? Like for example, helping kids that are disabled, helping adults, helping athletes that have gone through some trauma or things like that, right? So you really feel that the basics of 3D printing can really help with that, Tim? Like that could be a huge investment later down the line?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not too much of an expert in this, but I did see some news articles about these.
Yeah.
Is that hospitals they have these to print anything on demand that they need. And I've definitely seen some printers where they're doing with some organic material. I don't know how. I don't know too much about that, but it's definitely some field that has a lot of potential.
Absolutely.
In even saving lives or just making your life more convenient. One thing I always remember as a kid is whenever you have these DVDs, they always start with, you wouldn't download a car, so don't download a movie. But I think eventually we'll reach that point where that statement is not true anymore.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things in this world, folks. So unfortunately, we have to wrap up the show, Tim. So thank you so much for sharing your success story as well as educating us on DIY automation, Spark 3D printing, and so much more. On behalf of the viewers and Awaz Entertainment, we wish you all the very best in the success of your business as well as your career journey. So that's all we have time for today, folks. I'm your host, Prashanth, and this is Canadian Mosaic as part of Awaz Entertainment. If you've enjoyed the show, please follow us on social media. Remember, home automation is fun and entertaining. Just give it a try and just have fun with it. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you same time next week. And take care.